I'm Joshua. I'm 32 years old. And on the day I was supposed to be the happiest man alive, my father decided to teach me a lesson about loyalty by leaving 3 rows of chairs completely empty. Before I tell you how that empty row led to me watching my father get escorted off my property by police officers he called himself, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I read every single one. The air at the vineyard was thick, humid, and smelled faintly of rain and fermentation. It was a beautiful location, overlooking a lake that usually made me feel calm. But standing there at the altar, adjusting my cufflinks for the 10th time, I didn't feel calm. I felt a cold pit in my stomach that had nothing to do with pre-wedding jitters. My best man, Andrew, leaned in. He's a guy I've ridden with in the ambulance for 5 years. We've seen car crashes, heart attacks, and overdoses together. Nothing rattles him, but he looked rattled now. "Josh," he whispered, keeping his voice low so the guests in the second row wouldn't hear. "It's 5 minutes past start time. Are we waiting for them?" I looked out at the crowd. My wife, Sarah, has a huge family. They filled the left side of the aisle. A sea of cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. They were buzzing with excitement, smiling, taking photos. Then I looked to the right. My friends were there. My colleagues from the station were there. But the first 3 rows, the rows reserved for immediate family, were empty. Just white wooden folding chairs staring back at me. I had placed small bouquets of lilies on the end of each row. My mother loved lilies. I thought, maybe if she saw them, she'd soften up. Maybe she'd tell my father that this feud had gone on long enough. But the lilies just sat there, wilting in the humidity. "No," I told Andrew, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "We aren't waiting. They aren't coming." Andrew gave me a tight nod. He squeezed my shoulder, a firm, grounding grip, and signaled the officiant. The music started. Sarah walked down the aisle, and she looked breathtaking. For a moment, the anger vanished. She was the one person who truly knew me, the one who knew how much those empty chairs hurt, and yet she looked at me with enough love to fill the whole vineyard. We said our vows. I promised to protect her, to honor her. And as I said the words, I realized I was also making a promise to myself. I was done chasing people who didn't want to be caught. The ceremony ended. We walked back up the aisle as husband and wife. People cheered. Rice was thrown. But as we turned the corner to head toward the reception tent, the facade cracked. I pulled my phone out of my tuxedo pocket. I told myself I was just checking the time, but I knew I was lying. I was checking for a text, a call, an excuse, maybe a flat tire, maybe a medical emergency. Anything was better than the silence of choice. There was a notification. My heart jumped into my throat. It was from Dad. I stopped walking. Sarah stopped with me, her hand gripping mine. "Is it them?" she asked, her voice soft. I opened the message. There was no "congratulations." No "sorry we missed it." No "I hope the weather held up." The text read, "Since you saved so much money by not having a family at your wedding, you will pay the deposit for Caleb's venue. It is only fair. I need $8,400 transferred by Tuesday. Do not embarrass us." I stared at the screen. The numbers blurred. $8,400. "Josh?" Sarah asked, leaning in to look at the screen. She read it, and I felt her body stiffen next to mine. He sent you an invoice? On our wedding day?" I let out a laugh. It was a dry, humorless sound that frightened me a little. "Yeah, he did." My father, Thomas, was a man of logic, or at least his own twisted version of it. To him, relationships were transactional. I was the investment that was supposed to pay dividends. Caleb, my younger brother, was the luxury asset that needed maintenance. Caleb was getting married in August, 2 months from now. He wanted a reception at the Grand Hotel downtown, a place where plates started at $150 a head. I had chosen a vineyard specifically because it was beautiful but affordable. We paid for everything ourselves, every dime. "He thinks because they boycotted me," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't let out in years, "that I saved money on their dinners. And therefore, that money belongs to Caleb." "That's not how this works," Sarah said, her eyes flashing. "That's not how any of this works. Josh, don't you dare reply." "I won't," I said. I shoved the phone back into my pocket. "Not today. Today is about us." We went into the reception. We danced. We drank champagne. I smiled for photos. I shook hands with Sarah's Uncle Bob, who told me I was a good man and welcomed me to the family. I held it together, but in the back of my mind, that text message was burning a hole in my pocket. $8,400. It wasn't just the money. It was the entitlement. My father was a retired fire captain. He was a pillar of the community. Everyone respected Thomas. They saw the hero who ran into burning buildings. They didn't see the man who ran his household like a dictatorship. They didn't see the man who had conditioned me, since I was 16, to believe that my worth was measured in how much I could provide for the family. I remembered when I got my first job bagging groceries. Dad took 40% of my paycheck. Room and board, he called it. I was 16. When Caleb got his first job at 20, Dad let him keep every cent because Caleb needs to enjoy his youth. I looked across the dance floor at Sarah, laughing with her bridesmaids. She deserved better than a husband who was a doormat. I walked over to the bar and ordered a bourbon. Neat. Andrew walked up next to me. "You okay?" he asked. "My dad wants me to pay for Caleb's wedding venue," I said flatly. Andrew choked on his beer. "You're kidding. He didn't show up to yours. But he wants you to fund his. He says it's only fair because I saved money on their plates." Andrew set his beer down hard on the counter. "That's not fairness, Josh. That's a shakedown. You know that, right? That's extortion." "I know," I said. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned, grounding me. "I'm done, Andrew. I think I'm finally done." "Good," Andrew said. "Because if you pay that, I'm going to kick your ass myself." The night wound down. We said our goodbyes. We got into the car, the just married sign hanging off the back bumper. It was supposed to be the start of our honeymoon period. We weren't going on a trip immediately. We both had to work later in the week, but we had 2 days off together. As I drove us home, the silence in the car wasn't awkward, but it was heavy. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked quietly. "I'm going to handle it," I said. "I promise." We pulled into our driveway around 1 a.m. It was a modest house, a fixer-upper we had bought 3 years ago. I loved this house. It was the first thing I had ever owned that didn't have my father's name attached to it, or so I liked to tell myself. I unlocked the front door and carried Sarah over the threshold, trying to keep the tradition alive despite the mood. She laughed, and for a second, things felt normal. Then we walked into the kitchen. There, sitting on the center island, was a can of beer. Specifically, a cheap, generic brand of light beer. The kind my father drank. I froze. Sarah gasped. Did we leave that out?" she asked. "We don't drink that brand," I said, my voice dropping an octave. I walked over to the counter. Next to the beer can was a set of keys. My spare house keys. The ones I had given my mother for emergencies 3 years ago. My father had been here. While we were at our wedding, the wedding he refused to attend, he had let himself into my house. He had sat in my kitchen, drank a beer, and left his keys on the counter. It was a message. "I can come and go as I please. You can't lock me out." The text message was the demand. The keys were the threat. I looked at Sarah. Her face was pale. "He was here? In our house?" "Yeah." "I don't feel safe, Josh," she whispered. That broke something inside me. Hearing my wife say she didn't feel safe in her own home because of my father. I pulled out my phone again. I opened the banking app. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. "He wants a transfer," I said. "I'm giving him a transfer." I navigated to the transfer page. I selected my father's account, the one I had sent thousands of dollars to over the years for family emergencies, car repairs, and medical bills that insurance supposedly didn't cover. I typed in the amount, $1. In the memo line, where I usually wrote, "Love you" or "for the bills," I typed, "Best wishes for Caleb. You are going to need it." I hit send. Then I opened Google and searched for 24-hour locksmith. Pack a bag for the night, I told Sarah. We aren't sleeping until this house is secure. Josh, it's 1:30 in the morning, she said. I don't care, I replied, dialing the number. Nobody enters this house again without my permission. The subscription to my life is canceled. The phone rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. Citywide lock and key, this is Nicholas. I need an emergency rekey, I said, cutting straight to the chase. Exterior doors. All of them. Deadbolts and handles. There was a pause on the other end. The sound of shifting sheets. Sir, it's almost 2 in the morning. Emergency rates are double. You sure this can't wait until sunlight? I don't care about the cost, I said, looking at the beer can on my counter like it was a radioactive isotope. I need you here now. I'll pay triple if you can be here in 20 minutes. On my way, Nicholas said, the sleep instantly gone from his voice. I hung up and turned to Sarah. She was holding the spare keys my father had left, the physical manifestation of his dominance. He hadn't just left them, he had displayed them. He wanted me to know that my privacy was a privilege he granted, not a right I possessed. I'm going to check the rest of the house, I told her. Stay here. I walked through the hallway, checking every room. The guest room, the bathroom, our bedroom. Nothing seemed disturbed, but the air felt heavy, tainted. I opened my closet. My clothes were shifted slightly. Had he gone through my pockets? Had he looked for financial documents? I checked the small safe in the floor of the closet. It was still locked. I went back to the kitchen. He didn't take anything, I said. He just wanted to mark his territory. Sarah was angry now. The shock had worn off. He skipped our wedding to break into our house? Who does that, Josh? What kind of father does that? The kind who thinks he owns his children, I muttered. 20 minutes later, a van pulled into the driveway. Nicholas was a big guy, bearded, wearing a jumpsuit that had seen better days. He looked at me, then at Sarah, then at the beer can I still hadn't thrown away. Break-in? He asked, hauling a toolbox out of his van. Family, I said. Nicholas nodded slowly. Ah, sometimes that's worse. He went to work. The sound of the drill biting into the metal of the front door was the loudest thing in the neighborhood. Where's ZZT? To me, it sounded like freedom. It sounded like chains breaking. As Nicholas worked, my phone pinged. It was Dad. He must have received the notification from the bank. Text. Is this a joke? I see $1. You missed a few zeros. Fix it. Now. I didn't reply. Text. Joshua. Do not play games with me. Caleb is counting on this. You have a responsibility to this family. I looked at Nicholas replacing the strike plate on the doorframe. Hey, Nicholas? Yeah. Can you install those high-security deadbolts? The ones that are bump-proof. The Medico ones? Expensive, but yeah, they're basically fortress grade. Do it, I said. My phone pinged again. Text. You are being selfish. After everything I've done for you, I put a roof over your head. I made you a man. You're gonna throw that away over a deposit? Pick up the phone. I turned the phone off. It took Nicholas 2 hours to finish the job. Front door, back door, and the side door leading to the garage. By the time he was done, it was nearly 4 a.m. I wrote him a check for $850. It was a lot of money, but compared to the $8,400 my father wanted, it felt like a bargain. Here are your new keys, Nicholas said, handing me 4 shiny brass keys. Only people with these get in. Even if they have the old ones, they won't even turn the cylinder. Thanks, Nicholas. You have no idea what this means. He looked at me with a sympathetic grin. I got an ex-wife, buddy. I have some idea. After he left, Sarah and I stood in the kitchen. I took the old keys, the ones my parents had carried, and the beer can. I walked out to the garage, tossed them into the trash bin, and wheeled the bin out to the curb. Trash day was tomorrow. Felt poetic. We didn't sleep much that night. We lay in bed, listening to the house settle. Every creak made me tense up, but then I'd remember the new deadbolts. The next morning, the fallout began. I turned my phone back on around 9 a.m. 17 missed calls, 12 texts. For voicemails, most were from Dad. 2 were from Caleb. 1 was from Mom. I listened to Mom's voicemail first. Her voice sounded shaky, small. "Joshua, please. Your father is very upset. Just send the money. You know how he gets. We don't want any trouble. Just do the right thing for your brother." That was Mom. The peacekeeper. The enabler. She never yelled. She never demanded. She just guilt-tripped. She made you feel like you were the one causing the chaos by refusing to submit to the tyrant. I deleted it. Then I listened to one from Caleb. "Bro, seriously? The venue needs the check by Tuesday or we lose the date. Dad says you're holding out. Don't be a dick, man. You know I'm good for it. I'll pay you back later." I laughed out loud. Caleb had never paid anyone back in his life. He was the golden child. The sun rose and set on his whims. I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Sarah was sitting opposite me, scrolling through her iPad. "They're blowing up my phone too," she said without looking up. "Your dad texted me. He said I need to talk sense into you." "Block him," I said. "Already did." She looked up, her eyes fierce. "So what's the plan? Because they aren't going to stop." "I know," I said. "The plan is simple. We go to work. We live our lives. And we don't give them a dime. Not one single cent. They know where we live, Josh. Let them come," I said, though my stomach churned at the thought. "I want to see them try to get in with those keys." I spent the rest of the day in a state of hypervigilance. I expected my father's truck to roar up the driveway at any moment. But Sunday came and went quietly. The silence was almost worse than the yelling. It was the silence of a predator stalking its prey. Monday morning, I went back to work at the station. I'm a paramedic. It's a job that requires focus. You can't be thinking about your family drama when you're trying to intubate a guy in the back of a moving rig. Andrew was my partner that shift. As we checked the equipment in the ambulance, he looked at me. "You look like hell, Josh." "Thanks. Slept about 3 hours." "Did you pay him?" "I sent him $1, I said. Andrew stopped checking the oxygen tank. He grinned, a slow, wide grin. "You sent him $1? That's legendary. And also, dangerous. Thomas doesn't like being mocked." "He broke into my house, Andrew. Left a beer can on the counter." Andrew's face darkened. "Okay, so we're past family dispute and into criminal trespassing territory." I changed the locks. "Good. But watch your back. People like your dad. When they lose control, they try to burn everything down." Andrew was right. I just didn't know how right he was. Tuesday passed. The deadline for the venue deposit. My phone was surprisingly quiet. No calls. No texts. Wednesday came. Still nothing. I started to relax. Maybe they had given up? Maybe they found another sucker to pay for the wedding? Maybe, just maybe, my father had realized he pushed too far? I was naive. On Thursday afternoon, I came home from a 24-hour shift. I was exhausted. I parked my car, a beat-up sedan with 150,000 miles on it, next to Sarah's compact SUV. I walked to the mailbox. It was stuffed full. I flipped through the mail. Junk, bill, and then a thick envelope. Certified mail. Return address. The law offices of Davison and Associates. I frowned. I didn't know any Davison. I tore the envelope open right there in the driveway. I pulled out a stack of legal papers. Summons and complaint. My eyes scanned the dense legal jargon. Plaintiff, Thomas Miller. Defendant, Joshua Miller. My hands started to shake. Count 1, fraud. Count 2, embezzlement. Count 3, elder abuse. I leaned against my car, feeling the blood drain from my face. Allegation. The defendant, Joshua Miller, utilizing his medical access and undue influence, did fraudulently alter the life insurance beneficiary designation of the deceased grandmother, Eleanor Miller, thereby misappropriating funds in the amount of $16,800. I gasped. $16,800. My grandmother had died 2 years ago. She left me a small policy, just enough to cover her funeral and a little extra. I had used that money exactly as she asked, for her burial and to pay off some of her remaining debts. But the number, $16,800. That was exactly double the $8,400 my father wanted for Caleb's wedding. He wasn't just suing me. He was trying to frame me. He was accusing me of stealing from a dead woman to destroy my reputation, jeopardize my paramedic license, and force me to settle. He didn't want justice. He wanted leverage. I looked at the house, my fortress with the new locks, kept him out physically, but he had found a way to break in legally. "You want a war, Dad?" I whispered to the empty driveway. "Okay, you got one." I walked inside and threw the legal papers on the kitchen table. The heavy thud they made felt like a gavel coming down on my life. Sarah walked in a moment later, saw my face, and then saw the papers. She didn't ask. She just picked them up and started reading. "Elder abuse?" she whispered, horrified. "He's accusing you of elder abuse? You were the only one who visited Nana in the nursing home. You were the one who spoon-fed her when her hands shook too much. He knows that," I said, pacing the kitchen. "He doesn't care about the truth. He cares about the license." That was the kicker. In my state, if you have a pending charge or a civil judgment involving fraud or elder abuse, your paramedic license is automatically suspended pending investigation. If I lost my license, I lost my income. If I lost my income, I couldn't pay the mortgage. He was going for the jugular. "Why?" Sarah asked, tears welling in her eyes. "Why does he hate you this much?" "He doesn't hate me," I said, stopping my pacing. "He just thinks I'm a tool that stopped working. And when a tool stops working, you hammer it until it does. To understand why this was happening, you have to understand the money. In my family, money wasn't currency. It was a weapon. 6 years ago, I wanted to go to paramedic school. The program cost $12,350. I didn't have the credit for a loan yet because I was young and Dad had never let me build any financial history. Dad stepped in. "I'll pay it," he said. He played the benevolent patriarch. "I'll cover your tuition. You focus on your studies." I thought he was being a father. I was wrong. He was being a loan shark. The moment I graduated and got my first job, the repayment plan started. But it wasn't just the $12,350. He added interest. He added administrative fees. He added the cost of gas he used to drive me to class twice. For 3 years, I paid him $500 a month. Every month. If I was a day late, he would show up at my station and make a scene in front of my captain. "A man pays his debts, Joshua," he'd bellow. I calculated it once. I had paid him back nearly $18,000 for a $12,000 loan. Meanwhile, there was Caleb. When Caleb turned 21, while I was eating ramen noodles to pay Dad's vig, I pulled into the driveway for Sunday dinner and saw it. A brand new Porsche Macan. Black, shiny rims, a red bow on the hood. Caleb was jumping up and down, screaming. Mom was clapping. Dad was beaming with pride, his chest puffed out. "Whose car is that?" I had asked stupidly. "It's Caleb's birthday gift," Mom chirped. "Isn't it gorgeous?" I looked at Dad. "You bought him a Porsche? You told me last week you were tight on cash when I asked to defer my payment." Dad's face hardened. "This is different, Joshua. Caleb needs a reliable vehicle to get to his internships. Image matters in business." Caleb didn't have an internship. Caleb was a freelance DJ who worked maybe 2 weekends a month. "I drive a 10-year-old Honda that leaks oil," I said. "And I'm paying you $500 a month for school. Did Caleb pay for this?" Dad stepped close to me, invading my personal space. "You are the older brother. You are supposed to sacrifice. Caleb is delicate. He needs help. You have a trade. You can work. Don't be jealous, it's ugly." Jealousy? No, it was rage. That was the day I realized the rules were rigged. I was the draft horse. Caleb was the show pony. 6 months ago, I finally snapped. I took out a personal loan from a credit union. Sarah helped me co-sign. and I wrote Dad a check for the remaining balance of the tuition, plus an extra $1,000 just to shut him up. I sent it via certified mail with a letter, paid in full. Do not ask me for money again. He never cashed the check. He tore it up and told me, I don't want your bank money. I want you to respect the weekly payments. It builds character. I stopped paying him anyway. That was when the Cold War started. That was why the rows were empty at my wedding. And now this lawsuit. We need a lawyer, I told Sarah. A real one, not the guy who did our closing. We don't have money for a high-end litigator, Josh, she said, looking at our budget spreadsheet on the fridge. We have the house fund, I said. The renovation money. That's for the nursery, she said quietly. We had been trying to get pregnant. We wanted to fix up the spare room. I looked at her, and my heart broke. I know, but if I lose my license, there won't be a nursery. There won't be a house. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. Okay, find the shark. I called Andrew. Who's that lawyer you told me about? The one who got the EMT off that negligence charge last year. Lincoln, Andrew said immediately. Lincoln Graves. He's expensive, he dresses like he's in a mob movie, and he hates everyone. He's perfect. I got an appointment for the next morning. Lincoln Graves' office smelled of old leather and expensive cologne. He was a man in his 50s, sharp features, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He didn't offer me coffee. He just held out his hand for the summons. He read it in silence. His eyes scanned the pages, his expression unreadable. After 5 minutes, he tossed the papers onto his mahogany desk. Garbage, he said. Excuse me? I asked. The lawsuit. It's garbage. It's poorly drafted. The allegations are vague, and the timeline doesn't make sense. He leaned back in his chair. But that doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. A garbage lawsuit can still ruin your life if it sticks. He looked at me over his glasses. Your father? Yes. Why? He wants money for my brother's wedding. I refused. Lincoln let out a short, sharp bark of laughter. Ah, the golden child syndrome. I see this in probate court all the time. But suing for insurance fraud while the mother is still alive. That's bold. Or stupid. He says I forged Grandma's signature to change the beneficiary to myself. Lincoln tapped his pen on the desk. Did you? No. Grandma changed it herself 6 months before she died. She knew my dad would spend it on Caleb's gambling debts or cars. She wanted to make sure her funeral was paid for. Can you prove it? I have the original policy documents. And the notary log. Good. Lincoln stood up. Here's what we're going to do. We aren't just going to defend this. We are going to countersue. Abuse of process, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are going to make it so painful for your father that he will wish he never learned how to text. I just want him to leave us alone, I said. No, you don't, Lincoln said, his eyes cold. You want to win, because men like your father don't stop until they are beaten. They view mercy as weakness. Do you want to be weak, Joshua? Or do you want to be free? I thought about the empty chairs. I thought about the beer can. I thought about Sarah scared in her own kitchen. I want to be free, I said. Then write me a retainer check for $5,000, Lincoln said. And tell your father absolutely nothing. I left his office feeling lighter, but also terrified. I had just declared total war on my own family. I thought things would move slowly. Legal battles usually take months. But my father wasn't patient. He realized I wasn't responding to the summons immediately, so he decided to escalate. He decided to come for the house. Saturday morning, 7:15 a.m. I was in the kitchen making coffee. The sun was just coming up, casting long shadows across the lawn. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. Then I saw the flashing lights reflecting off the kitchen window. Blue and red. My stomach dropped. I walked to the front window and peered out through the blinds. There was a sheriff's cruiser parked at the curb, and right behind it my father's pickup truck. My father was standing on the lawn, gesturing wildly. Next to him was Mom looking at the ground. And facing them was a deputy sheriff. "Sarah," I yelled, running to the hallway. "Wake up. They're here." Sarah stumbled out of the bedroom, wearing her robe. "Who?" "Dad, Mom, and the cops." "The cops? Why?" "I don't know. Stay inside. Keep your phone recording." I opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air was cool, but I was sweating. As soon as Dad saw me, he pointed a finger like a weapon. "There he is. That's the thief. That's the squatter." The deputy turned to look at me. It was Isaiah. I knew him. Not well, but we had been on scenes together. He was a decent guy, strict but usually fair. "Morning, Isaiah," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I walked down the steps, stopping halfway. I didn't want to go down to their level. I wanted the high ground, literally. "Joshua," Isaiah said, touching the brim of his hat. He looked uncomfortable. "Your father called us. He has a complaint regarding access to the property." "Access?" I looked at Dad. He was red-faced, vibrating with anger. "He changed the locks," Dad shouted. "I tried to come in to get my tools from the garage, and my key wouldn't work. I own this house. He has no right to lock me out of my own property." He held up a piece of paper. "I have the deed right here. I co-signed for this house. It's my asset." I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was wringing her hands, a nervous habit she'd had for years. She knew this was wrong, but she was too afraid to stop him. "Is this true, Joshua?" Isaiah asked. "Is his name on the title?" "He co-signed the mortgage 3 years ago," I said, "because the bank required it at the time." "Ha!" Dad yelled triumphantly. "See? Co-signed. That means I'm an owner. And under state law, you cannot lock an owner out of the primary residence. Arrest him for illegal eviction." He was enjoying this. He was performing for the neighbors. I saw Ryan, my next-door neighbor, peeking out from behind his curtains. Dad thought he had me checkmated. He thought I was still the scared kid who didn't understand finance. He thought I didn't know about the paperwork. But he had forgotten something. He had forgotten about the dark year. 3 years ago, right after we bought the house, Dad got sued. A messy business dispute involving a botched construction job he consulted on. He was terrified he was going to lose everything. He scrambled to hide his assets. He came to me, panicked. "Josh, if they see my name on your house, they'll put a lien on it. We need to get my name off the title temporarily." So we went to a notary. He signed a quitclaim deed, a document that legally transferred his entire interest in the property to me. He did it to save his own skin. Later, the lawsuit against him was dropped. He forgot about the deed. He never asked to be put back on. And I never reminded him. I looked at Isaiah. "Can I go inside and get a document?" "Make it quick," Isaiah said. I went inside. Sarah was filming from the window. "You got this?" she asked. "Watch this," I said. I went to the safe. I pulled out the file marked house. I found the quitclaim deed, stamped, notarized, and recorded with the county clerk. I walked back outside. Dad was smirking. "Pack your bags, boy. We're selling the house to pay for the wedding. Since you won't give cash, we'll liquidate the asset." I handed the paper to Isaiah. "What is this?" Dad snapped. "That," I said, "is a quitclaim deed, signed by Thomas Miller, dated October 14th, 2021, relinquishing all rights, title, and interest in the property to Joshua Miller." Isaiah read the document. He checked the seal. He checked the recording stamp. He looked up at Dad. His expression had changed. The sympathy was gone. "Mr. Miller," Isaiah said, his voice dropping to that official cop tone, "is this your signature?" Dad squinted at the paper. His face went from red to purple. He snatched at it, but Isaiah pulled it back. That was just a formality." Dad spluttered. "We didn't mean it. It was just on paper." "In the eyes of the law, paper is all that matters," Isaiah said. "According to this, You have no ownership of this home. You are not a tenant. You are not a resident. Isaiah turned to me. Do you want him here? No, I said clearly. I want him to leave, and I want him trespassed. If he comes back, I want him arrested. You ungrateful little brat. Dad lunged toward the stairs. Isaiah stepped in between us, his hand resting on his belt. Not drawing a weapon, but a warning. Sir, step back. Now. Dad froze. He looked at Isaiah, then at me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He wasn't the captain anymore. He was just an angry old man on a lawn he didn't own. You're stealing my house, Dad hissed. After all I sacrificed. You gave it away to save yourself, I said coldly. You forgot. I didn't. Isaiah pointed to the truck. Mr. Miller, get in your vehicle. You are leaving. If you return to this address, you will be taken into custody for criminal trespass and harassment. Do you understand? Mom finally spoke up. Thomas, please, let's just go. She tugged on his sleeve. Dad yanked his arm away. He glared at me with pure hatred. This isn't over. The court date is coming. You think you're smart? Wait until the judge sees what you did to your grandmother. You'll be in jail, and I'll take the house anyway as restitution. Get in the truck, Isaiah barked. They got in. The engine roared. Dad peeled out, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. Isaiah turned to me. I'm sorry about that, Josh. Family stuff. It's messy. Thanks, Isaiah. Can I get a copy of the report? I'll file it. It'll help with your lawyer. I watched the cruiser drive away. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had stood my ground. I had won the battle. But the war was heading to the courtroom, and Dad had one more card to play, the fraud accusation. He was convinced he could pin the insurance theft on me. What he didn't know was that Lincoln and I had found something else. Something buried deep in the financial records. Something that was going to turn his accusation into a confession. The weeks leading up to the court date were a blur of stress and preparation. The restraining order I filed after the dawn raid kept Dad away physically, but his presence hung over us like a storm cloud. Caleb sent me messages from burner numbers. You're ruining the family. Mom is crying every day. Just pay the money and drop the house thing. I didn't reply. I was focused on the investigation. Lincoln had hired a forensic accountant. We needed to prove not only that I didn't steal Grandma's money, but to show the pattern of financial abuse. 3 days before the trial, I was sitting in Lincoln's office again. This time there was coffee. We found it, Lincoln said. He placed a thick binder on the desk. Found what? The $16,800, Lincoln said. Your father claims you stole it from the insurance payout. But we subpoenaed the bank records for the account where the check was deposited. He flipped the binder open. The check was deposited into an account at First National. An account in the name of Joshua Miller. My heart stopped. I don't have an account at First National. Exactly, Lincoln said. But someone opened one in your name, using your social security number, using your old address, your parents' address. He pointed to a signature card. Look at the signature. It read Joshua Miller, but the J was loopy. The M was sharp. That's not my signature, I whispered. That's Dad's handwriting. He tries to copy mine, but he always loops the J like that. We had a handwriting expert analyze it. It's a 99% match for Thomas Miller. The pieces fell into place. Dad had forged my signature to open an account, deposited Grandma's check, which was legally mine, and then drained the money. He had stolen from me, and now he was suing me for the very money he stole, counting on the fact that the account was in my name to make me look guilty. It gets worse, Lincoln said. His voice was grim. We looked at the withdrawal history of that account. Where did the money go? Most of it was withdrawn in cash, but there was one electronic transfer. $5,000. To who? To a luxury car rental agency. Exotic and Elite Rentals. I frowned. Why would Dad rent a car? He has his truck. Check the date, Lincoln said. I looked. The transfer was dated 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I murmured. Then it hit me. Caleb's bachelor party weekend. He had posted photos on Instagram posing with a Lamborghini. I thought he was just posing with a stranger's car. He used the stolen insurance money to rent a Lamborghini for Caleb, I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. He stole my inheritance from Grandma to let Caleb play rich kid for a weekend. And now he needs $8,400 to cover the wedding deposit because the well has run dry, Lincoln concluded. He robbed Peter to pay Paul, and now he's trying to sue Peter to pay Paul again. I sat back in the chair. I felt sick. It wasn't just greed. It was a complete lack of humanity. I was livestock to him. This isn't just a civil defense anymore, Lincoln said. This is criminal identity theft, fraud, forgery. If we present this in court, your father isn't just losing the lawsuit. He's going to prison. He looked me in the eye. Are you ready for that, Joshua? Once we ring this bell, you can't unring it. He will go to jail. I thought about Mom. I thought about the holidays. I thought about the backyard BBQs that would never happen again. Then I thought about the empty chairs at my wedding. I thought about the accusations that threatened my career, the career I built to save lives. He was willing to destroy my ability to help others just to fund a party. He made his choice, I said. Ring the bell. The courthouse was freezing. They always are. It smells of floor wax and anxiety. I sat at the defendant's table next to Lincoln. On the other side, Dad sat with a lawyer who looked like he chased ambulances for a living. Ill-fitting suit, disorganized papers. Caleb was there too, sitting in the gallery, looking bored and annoyed, checking his watch. Mom wasn't there. I was grateful for that. The judge, Honorable Jonathan Hayes, was a stern man with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Case number 4922, the bailiff announced. Miller versus Miller. Dad's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is a clear case of elder financial abuse. The defendant, Joshua Miller, used his position as a paramedic to manipulate his dying grandmother and redirect her insurance funds to himself. We are asking for full restitution of $16,800 plus punitive damages. Dad nodded vigorously, looking at the judge with a practiced expression of sorrow. She trusted him, Dad said out of turn, and he robbed her grave. Mr. Miller, speak only when addressed, Judge Hayes snapped. Lincoln stood up. He didn't use notes. He just buttoned his jacket. Your Honor, the plaintiff's claims are entirely fabricated. Not only did my client not steal these funds, but we will prove that the plaintiff is the one who misappropriated them, using identity theft to frame his own son. A murmur went through the courtroom. Dad scoffed loudly. Liar. Evidence, Mr. Graves? The judge asked. Defense Exhibit A, Lincoln said, handing a folder to the bailiff. GPS records from the defendant's ambulance unit. Lincoln projected a map onto the courtroom screen. The plaintiff claims the funds were withdrawn in person at a branch in Springfield on November 12th at 2 p.m. Here is the GPS log for Joshua Miller's ambulance. At 2 p.m. on that day, Mr. Miller was responding to a cardiac arrest call on Interstate 95, 40 miles away from the bank branch. Unless Mr. Miller can teleport, he did not make that withdrawal. Dad's lawyer looked confused. He shuffled his papers. Well, he showed the transfer to Exotic and Elite Rentals. The stolen funds were used to rent a Lamborghini Huracan, a vehicle that was featured on the social media account of Caleb Miller, the plaintiff's other son, on the weekend of the withdrawal. Lincoln turned to face Dad. Mr. Miller, did you forge your son's signature to steal his inheritance and fund a luxury joyride for his brother? Objection. Dad's lawyer squeaked. I. Dad stammered. He looked at Caleb. Caleb was sinking low in his seat, his face pale. Mr. Miller, the judge said, his voice like thunder. I am looking at these documents. This looks like bank fraud. I am pausing these civil proceedings. Your Honor, Dad yelled, standing up. He owes me. I paid for his school. He owes me that money. It doesn't matter whose name was on the account. It's family money. Sit down, the bailiff barked. You don't understand. Dad was losing it now. The mask of the respectable fire captain was slipping. I am the head of this house. I decide where the money goes. Joshua is selfish. He refused to pay for the wedding. I had to take what was mine. The entire courtroom went silent. He had just confessed. He justified theft as parental right. The judge took off his glasses. He looked at Dad with pure disgust. Mr. Miller, you just admitted to forgery and theft on the record. Bailiff, please secure the courtroom. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office immediately. Dad's eyes went wide. What? No. This is a civil court. You can't. Two bailiffs moved in. They grabbed Dad's arms. Don't touch me, Dad screamed. He looked at me. Joshua, tell them to stop. I'm your father. I sat there, frozen. Part of me wanted to look away. Part of me wanted to cry. But the part of me that had been honed by years of empty promises and manipulation simply watched. I stood up slowly. I looked Dad in the eye. You're not my father, I said, my voice steady enough for the room to hear. You're just a man who owes me a lot of money. Joshua, he screamed as they handcuffed him. Caleb, do something. I looked back at the gallery. Caleb was gone. He had slipped out the back door the moment the handcuffs came out. The golden child had fled, leaving the king to fall alone. The judge looked at me. Mr. Miller, the case against you is dismissed with prejudice, and I will ensure the DA receives all these exhibits. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. I walked out of the courtroom. Sarah was waiting in the hallway. She hugged me, and I finally let out the breath I had been holding for months. It's over, she asked. The lawsuit is, I said. But the rest is just beginning. Dad was in custody. Caleb was on the run from his own debts, and I was standing there a free man. But there was one more loose end. One more secret that Lincoln had found, something that involved the one thing Dad valued more than money. His medal of valor. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut is distinct. It's mechanical, cold, and final. It was the last sound my father, Thomas Miller, heard as a free man. As the bailiffs escorted him out through the side door, he didn't look back at me. He looked at the empty seat where Caleb had been sitting just moments before. Even in his downfall, his concern was for the golden child who had abandoned him the second the ship started sinking. I sat at the defendant's table for a long time after the courtroom cleared out. Lincoln, my lawyer, was packing up his briefcase with the casual efficiency of a man who had just won a game of chess against a pigeon. You okay, Josh? Lincoln asked, snapping the latches of his case. I don't know, I said honestly. I thought I would feel happy, or vindicated, but I just feel tired. That's normal, Lincoln said. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, and you just crashed. Go home. Hug your wife. We have a lot of paperwork to do next week, but for today you're done. I walked out into the hallway. Sarah was there, pacing. She ran to me and buried her face in my chest. I held her, smelling her shampoo, grounding myself in the reality that we were safe. But the hallway wasn't empty. My mother, Martha, was standing near the elevators. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. She wasn't looking at me with relief. She was looking at me with a mixture of fear and accusation. Joshua, she said. Her voice was trembling. Mom, I said. I didn't let go of Sarah. They took him, she whispered. They took your father to the holding cell. They said he's facing felony charges. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. I know, I said. He did those things, Mom. She took a step closer, her hands wringing together. You have to drop the charges, Joshua. You have to tell the judge it was a mistake. Tell them you gave him permission. Please, he's 60 years old. He can't go to jail. He's a captain. I stared at her. Even now, after everything, after the break-in, the stolen inheritance, the Lamborghini, the attempt to destroy my career, she was still protecting him. She was still asking me to set myself on fire to keep him warm. I didn't press the charges, Mom, I said, my voice flat. The state did. The judge did. I can't stop it even if I wanted to. And I don't want to. Her face twisted. How can you be so cruel? He's your father. He raised you. He put a roof over your head. He stole $16,000 from me, I said, my voice rising. He stole Grandma's money. He tried to take my house. He tried to get my paramedic license revoked. He didn't act like a father, Mom. He acted like a criminal. He did it for the family, she cried out. He did it for Caleb. Your brother needed help. And that makes it okay? I asked, incredulous. Sacrificing me for Caleb is okay? She didn't answer, but her silence was the loudest answer I had ever heard. In her world, yes, it was okay, because I was the resource and Caleb was the priority. Go home, Mom, I said. Call a lawyer for Dad, but don't call me. I took Sarah's hand and walked to the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw my mother standing there, alone, a relic of a dynasty that had just collapsed. The next few weeks were a slow-motion car crash for the Miller family. Lincoln kept me updated. The district attorney didn't go easy on Dad. The evidence was overwhelming. The GPS data, the handwriting analysis, the bank records, it was an open and shut case. Dad tried to plead not guilty initially, claiming I had verbally authorized it, but the exotic and elite rentals transaction was the nail in the coffin. No jury would believe I authorized my father to steal my grandmother's funeral money to rent a Lamborghini for my brother. Dad took a plea deal. 2 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation, and full restitution. But here was the kicker. Dad didn't have the money. He had spent it all on the rental, the deposit for Caleb's venue, and keeping up appearances. To pay the restitution and his own mounting legal fees, Dad had to liquidate his assets. I remember the day I drove past my childhood home. There was a for sale sign on the lawn. Not just any sign, but a foreclosure/bank-owned rider attached to it. It turned out, Dad had refinanced the house 3 times to pay for Caleb's lifestyle over the years. He had 0 equity. When the legal bills hit, the house of cards fell. They lost the house. The house where I grew up, the house where Dad ruled like a king, was sold to pay for the crimes he committed against his own son. Mom moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town. She refused to speak to me, which was fine. I didn't have anything left to say, but there was still one loose end. Caleb, the golden child. The boy who drove a Porsche while I ate ramen. The boy who fled the courtroom like a coward. I hadn't heard from him since the trial. His social media went dark. The photos of the Lamborghini were deleted. One Tuesday, about a month after the trial, I got a call from Lincoln. You're going to want to hear this, Lincoln said. Your brother was picked up in Nevada. Nevada? Las Vegas. Seems he was trying to use a credit card that didn't belong to him at a casino. But that's not the best part. What is it? The district attorney added him to your father's case. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Since he was the beneficiary of the stolen funds, the car, the venue deposit, and since text messages on your father's phone proved Caleb knew exactly where the money came from, he's being charged as an accomplice. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. So he's going to jail too? Likely not prison, since he has no priors, Lincoln said. But he's looking at hefty probation, massive fines, and a felony record. His influencer career is over. No respectable company will hire him. He always wanted to be famous, I muttered. Now he is, just not the way he planned. The wedding, Caleb's massive, expensive wedding at the Grand Hotel, was obviously canceled. The fiancée, a girl named Jessica who I actually felt sorry for, broke it off the moment the news hit the local papers. She didn't want to marry into a crime family. So there it was. The Miller Empire. The king was in a cell. The prince was a felon. The queen was in exile. And the servant, the one they tried to crush, was the only one left standing. But victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like cleaning up after a natural disaster. You're glad you survived, but you still have to look at the wreckage. I thought the story ended there. I thought I could just close the book. But the universe has a funny way of bringing things full circle. A week before Dad was scheduled to report to prison to begin his sentence, I received a package in the mail. It was from Dad's lawyer. Inside was a letter. No money, just a letter. Joshua, your father has requested that you return his Medal of Valor. He claims you took it from the house when you helped your mother move out. It is not listed in the assets seized by the court. He wants it back. He says it is the only thing he has left. I frowned. I didn't help Mom move out, I told Sarah. I haven't stepped foot in that house in months. Then where is it? Sarah asked. The Medal of Valor. It was the highest honor the fire department gave. Dad won it 20 years ago for pulling 2 kids out of a burning apartment complex. It was the centerpiece of his life. It hung in a shadow box in the living room. He polished the glass every Sunday. He defined himself by that medal. It was his shield against the world. Proof that he was a good man despite how he treated us behind closed doors. If it wasn't in the house and the court didn't take it, where was it? A terrible suspicion started to form in my gut. I went to the garage and dug through an old box of Caleb's things that had ended up at my place years ago. I found an old notebook where Caleb used to keep a list of his contacts. I found the number for a guy named Fast Eddie. Eddie ran a pawn shop downtown, a place that didn't ask too many questions. Caleb used to brag about selling his old gaming consoles there when he needed quick cash. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? Sarah asked. To find the last piece of the puzzle, I said. The pawn shop was a dim, dusty place that smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. The walls were lined with power tools, musical instruments, and jewelry that represented 1,000 broken dreams. I walked up to the counter. An older man with thick glasses looked up. Help you? I'm looking for a medal, I said. A fire department Medal of Valor. It would have been brought in about 2 months ago. Maybe by a young guy, blonde hair, drives a Porsche. The man's eyes flickered. He knew exactly what I was talking about. I can't discuss client transactions, he grunted. I'm not asking for the client's name, I said. I pulled out my badge, my paramedic ID. It wasn't a police badge, but it commanded a certain level of professional courtesy. That medal was stolen property. It belongs to a man who is about to go to prison. I'm his son. I'm trying to recover it before the police get involved and seize your inventory as evidence. The pawnbroker sighed. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small cardboard box. He opened it. There it was. The gold star suspended from a red and blue ribbon. Captain Thomas Miller. For bravery. Came in 6 weeks ago, the man said. Kid said his dad died and left it to him. Wanted cash for a business investment. Let me guess, I said. He wanted 5,000? Close. Gave him 3. He took it. Caleb. My stomach churned. Caleb had stolen the one thing that actually meant something to Dad. He didn't steal money this time. He stole Dad's identity, his pride, his legacy. And he did it for $3,000, probably to pay for a VIP table at a club or a weekend trip. Dad thought I had taken it out of spite. He couldn't conceive that his golden child, the boy he destroyed his life to protect, had sold his heroism for pocket change. How much to get it back? I asked. Tickets expired, the man said. It's for sale now. I put a price of $4,000 on it. It's real gold. I stared at the medal. I hated my father. I hated what he did to me. But seeing that medal sitting in a dirty cardboard box in a pawn shop, it felt wrong. Not because Dad deserved it, but because the act of bravery that earned it was real. Those 2 kids he saved were real. And I realized something else. If I left it here, I was letting Caleb win. I was letting the rot of my family consume everything, even the few good things that had happened. I'll take it, I said. I pulled out my credit card, the one Sarah and I used for emergencies. We had been saving for a honeymoon. 4,000, the man said. Fine. I walked out of that shop with the shadow box under my arm. It was heavy, heavier than it looked. I sat in my car and looked at it. The glass was smudged. The velvet backing was dusty. I took a picture of it. I texted the photo to Lincoln. Tell Dad I found his medal. Tell him Caleb sold it to a pawn shop for $3,000 weeks before the trial. Tell him I bought it back. I didn't wait for a reply. I started the car. The text from Lincoln came back an hour later. I told him. He didn't believe me at first. I showed him the pawn ticket receipt you sent. He didn't say anything. He just sat there and cried. He wants to know when you're bringing it to him. I looked at the phone and felt a strange sense of calm. I'm not. I whispered to myself. I wasn't going to bring it to him. Giving it back to him would be a kindness he hadn't earned. It would be invalidation that he was still the hero. He wasn't the hero anymore. He was a felon. He was a father who ate his young. But I wasn't going to keep it either. I didn't want that energy in my house. I didn't want to look at it and be reminded of the man who valued a piece of metal more than his own flesh and blood. I drove to the Fire Department Museum downtown. It's a small brick building dedicated to the history of the service in our city. I walked in and asked to speak to the curator, a retired chief named Chief O'Malley. I knew him by reputation. A good man. Joshua Miller, he said, shaking my hand. I heard about the troubles. I'm sorry, son. Thanks, Chief, I said. I placed the shadow box on his desk. Is that Thomas's Medal of Valor? I said. Chief O'Malley ran a hand over the frame. A hell of a rescue. I was there that night. Your dad was a lion. He was, I said. But he's not that man anymore. Why are you bringing this to me? I want to donate it, I said. To the museum. That's generous. We can put up a plaque. Donated by Captain Thomas Miller? No, I said firmly. I took a pen and a piece of paper from his desk. I wrote down a name. I want the plaque to read, in memory of Eleanor Miller, the only one who never forgot the value of truth. Eleanor was my grandmother, the woman whose legacy Dad had stolen, the woman whose money was supposed to bury her with dignity but was used to rent a sports car. Chief O'Malley looked at the paper, then at me. He didn't ask questions. He saw the resolve in my eyes. We can do that, he said. It'll be in the Hall of Honor. Thank you, Chief. I walked out of the museum and the sun was setting. The sky was a brilliant streak of purple and orange. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. I drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Sarah sitting on the front porch. She had 2 glasses of wine and a bowl of popcorn. You look different, she said as I walked up the steps. I feel different, I said. It's gone. The medal, the weight. I sat down next to her. We watched the streetlights flicker on. Lincoln called, Sarah said. He said your dad fired his lawyer after he found out about the medal. He's going into prison next week alone. No family seeing him off. And Caleb? Still in Nevada pending extradition. Mom is calling everyone in the extended family telling them you're the devil. I took a sip of wine. Let her talk. The people who matter know the truth. And the people who believe her, they don't matter. It's been 6 months since that day. Life has settled into a rhythm that I never thought possible. A rhythm of peace. We finally finished the nursery. We painted it a soft sage green. Sarah is 4 months pregnant. We found out last week. It's a boy. We aren't naming him Thomas. We aren't naming him Caleb. We're naming him Leo, after Sarah's grandfather. I still work as a paramedic. Every now and then, I drive past the old house. Strangers live there now. They planted a garden in the front yard where Dad used to park his truck. It looks better. It looks like a home, not a fortress. I haven't spoken to Dad. I know he's in a medium security facility upstate. I send money to his commissary account once a month. Not a lot, just enough for toothpaste and soap. I don't send letters. I don't visit. The money is anonymous. I do it not because he deserves it, but because I refuse to be the man who leaves someone with nothing. That's who he is. It's not who I am. Caleb is working at a car wash in Reno as part of his work release program. From what I hear, he hates it. Good. Character building. The empty rose at my wedding used to haunt me. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, seeing those white chairs and feeling the rejection in my bones. But now when I look back at my wedding photos, I don't see the empty chairs. I see the people who were there. I see Andrew, my best man, who stood by me when I was falling apart. I see my colleagues who covered my shifts so I could go to court. I see Sarah's family, who welcomed me without hesitation. And I see Sarah, the woman who stood in the kitchen while a locksmith drilled through the door at 2 a.m. and told me we would survive this. I realized that family isn't a static noun. It's a verb. It's something you do. You family people by showing up, by respecting them, by loving them without conditions or invoices attached. My father thought family was ownership. My brother thought family was a resource. My mother thought family was a cult of silence. I broke the cycle. My son will never know what it feels like to be an investment. He will never receive an invoice for his existence. He will never have to buy his own father's love. Last week, Andrew and I were responding to a call. An elderly man had fallen in his garden. His son was there, holding his hand, crying, telling him it was going to be okay. The love in that son's eyes was so pure, so terrified of loss. Andrew looked at me as we loaded the patient into the ambulance. "You gonna be that kind of dad, Josh?" I smiled. "Yeah, I am. I am Joshua Miller. I am a husband, a paramedic, and a father-to-be. I was abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because in the silence they left behind, I finally heard my own voice. And that voice said, 'You are enough.' If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: toxic loyalty is not love. It is bondage. Many of us are raised with the belief that family is everything, and that we must endure abuse, manipulation, and disrespect simply because we share DNA with someone. My father used that belief as a weapon to control me and rob me, both financially and emotionally. He counted on my guilt to keep me in line. But the moment I sent that $1 transfer, I learned that the most powerful word in the English language is no. Saying no to family is terrifying. It feels like a violation of nature. But sometimes, it is the only way to save yourself. You are not a bank account. You are not a retirement plan. You are not a doormat. You deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your presence, not your utility. If you are sitting in a row of empty chairs right now, wondering why you aren't good enough for them, stop. Look around at the people who did show up. That is your family. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut ties with a family member to save your own sanity? Was it the hardest thing you ever did, or the most liberating? Drop a comment below with your story, or if this resonated with you, just comment good. Let me know that we are in this together, breaking cycles and building better futures. Thank you for listening to my journey. Stay strong, stay safe, and remember, you hold the keys to your own life. Never give them away.